This blackberry bed was transplanted 2 years ago. Put the blackberry and this wild grape in here. And see the size of that berry? I'll let my grandson come and pick these. You can have them fresh. But this bed has just been going, and I've just been putting compost tea in it. Just kind of leaving them alone beside the compost tea and letting the rain water them. And you see the grapes? Starting to make some grapes down here. So I do need to trellis this in the relative near future. And by the way, the leaves are edible. You know, I think everyone's heard of the Greek stuffed grape leaves, and you wait for them to get a little bit bigger, and then they have to be processed because they get tough. But all these fresh ones on the tips, they're delicious. But with all foods, all new foods, if you're not used to eating it, don't get a huge serving of it. Start out small and build yourself up to see if you can digest it, or if you have any problems with it, you didn't overdo it the first time you did it. But so much, I am learning so much is edible, whether it's raw like this, or you can cook this also, and some things you have to cook. But look at that, see? All this wild grape, all this wild food here. And all these leaves, I can come and pick the leaves and pickle them and eat them later. So check out what's in your area. The Department of the Army puts out a really good field book for edibles and non-edibles, and what's really good is their description on how to try foods, and you know what to do to rule something out, and you know how long to leave it in your mouth the first time before you swallow anything. And I need to identify this. I think this is the wild cherry that we've got growing here, and they're really, really tart, bitter and tart. And there is cyanide in this plant. There is a component. In fact, the one way to identify this plant is later on there'll be tent caterpillars. They make this huge webbing, and there'll be these little caterpillars in there until they bust out and they get all over. I mean, they just cover the plant and the ground, and they just start spreading out like crazy. They're kind of gross. But come to find out, colts were eating the tent caterpillars. They nibble, and they were dying, and they were getting cyanide poisoning. And they did a lot of research and come to find out it was from this plant and the caterpillars, and they were eating off of it. And you just can't have this in a pasture. Do not have it around livestock. And this stuff grows like crazy because the birds, see, look at some more over there. The birds, way up there even, eat the berries when they're ripe, and they deposit seeds all over the place. I've got one growing in a bucket that's volunteered itself. So you have to be careful. You have to be aware that though it may be an edible for us, there's certain amounts and certain things you have to be careful with. You don't just go around and munch on the leaves and what have you, or eat too much of this at one time. Because just like with any fruit, if you're not used to eating a bunch of strawberries and you go out and buy a bushel of strawberries and you eat it at one sitting, you're going to end up in the bathroom. You know, not in the hospital, but in the bathroom. And some of this may end up in the hospital or the morgue. So just be careful and be aware of what you're eating, and not to overdo it. The Department of Army has that wonderful book, so just and it goes in detail, and also Sustenance and Covering. He has some information about trying out wild stuff, and you do it in stages, so it's real informative. And I'm not to that point. But one good piece of advice is don't waste your time on figuring out if a plant is edible or not if you don't have an overabundance of it. There's no point if you only have a small bit. It's not going to sustain you. You need to try something that you have an abundance of, so at least you didn't waste your time finding out something was edible and you don't have enough to make a meal. Thanks for watching.